law-making process as well, like we have all discussed that animal law, animal protection law, and very effective reaction from the policy. So in this traditional way of public policy making should also include such kind of tools of using social media and let public to more contribute to these policies.
This is a perfect point. Just the other day, I was discussing with friends, or was it in the classroom, fellas? Like we talked about social media, right? We were talking about social media. Okay, just one thing. Let me get back to this chart. This chart comes in very handy, you know. This one. Sorry. Okay, so this is the whole process. Well, this is again, this is an analytical breakup of a rather chaotic process. Of course, there is a kind of a logic of progression, but it doesn't always work this way. And there is not necessarily a sequential logic of working. They can work. So how are we doing time-wise? So we're good? Okay. Here, one thing. So this is right a chain of this. So I'm not going to go back to theoretical roots of this to better explain your question. Explain my answer to your question. So this is a chain of decision making. Question: how do you make a decision? Not only as a policymaker, as an ordinary individual, every single one of us. How do we make a decision? How do we make a decision? Like, so you're hungry and you wanna, right? You wanna just eat something. How do you make your decision? First, you wanna decide whether or not you want to eat. You wanna decide where you wanna go to eat something. Then you decide how much you're gonna spend on what food items, right? Depending on your taste. Then you decide on how, not only the price, but also the amount of food that you want to get as intake, calorie intake. Then you eat it, and halfway through you don't like the taste of it, you leave some of them behind, right? Then you are done, you say, I am okay, I am full. No, I don't like it, I will get a bit more, right? It's not one process. But what sort of factors kind of influence your decision making? One is your urge, right? The pain in your stomach keeps pushing, right? Go eat something, go eat something. But what else what sort of a cognitive factor, cognitive input do you have in your mind that shapes your decision? One of them are like hormones, right? Your fears, your psychology, right? And you process information.
Do we need rational inputs for that?
Yeah, I mean, by rational, I mean those like the solid facts, like the price of food.
And the budget.
And the budget, right?
The budget,
Solid.
the
Like
budget
there's like the money in your pocket,
The resources you have.
food quality, right? How it's cooked, right? It's constituent, right? It's recipe. You know what it is like, right? So it's piece of information, and then you have your tastes and values. And perhaps you want to eat, first, I love pastry, but I cannot eat pastry, like for health reasons. But sometimes I eat pastry, but I'm afraid that my friends will see it and will criticize me. Right? There are such factors too. So then I'll make a decision. I will get this, I will get that. This is how I end up with my food. You see? So here I have information, I have preferences, I have tastes, I have values. All of them are combined into one single decision. And there are billions of decisions of that sort. So here then, the secret to not only that sort of an agenda, but for an organization, a bureaucratic organization too. We can see this as flows of information. Information flows. Right? These are information flows, not only individual, but flows of information, like going through the tubes. So here, at what point social media kicks in? If that information is out and open and visible to the public, then public pressure kicks in. You see? If there's secrecy, then no one will be aware of it. People will learn it at the last minutes. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it depends on how strictly protected those flows of information are. So we call this nodality. right? One of the features of that you have, let me put it that way, you have 4 sources that you use in public policy making and implementation. Money, authority, organizational power, and nodality, meaning your control over the flow of information and knowledge production. So in fact, you have 2 ways in which you can control the information flows. First, to keep it extremely secret and behind the doors, you get increasingly more secretive. So meaning that the stronger we have social media, the more secretive will the policy process go. The more transparent you get here, the more secretive will be, the more underground will the policymakers go. They will have to be more secretive. Yer altına çekilmek zorundasın. So that you will keep working uninterrupted. Because you have expert-based calculations and they require you to that sort of a course of action. But then people hear about it and they say, no, you cannot do this. But sometimes public, they are totally irrational. People just go mad. You cannot always trust people's insight all the time. I might sound a bit undemocratic, but I can give you examples right away, but I'm not starting another debate here, right? But you see my point? They can get more secretive. Not necessarily the top policymakers, but the top brokers, they can get more secretive. They talk less. This is one strategy. The other strategy is instead try to control that information flow and, for instance, start iletişim başkanlığı or fact-checking institutions. Regulate information flow or censorship or regulate the media. Either you will get more secretive or regulate it more. Well, you have to do both. And this makes you look more authoritarian. Right? Just dialectically speaking works simultaneously. So you will get again more secretive, or you will try to regulate it more. You will employ your own bureaucrats to also begin to disseminate information or control or fact checking. I hope my point is clear.
Yeah.
But this means that, let me put it another way. But let me put another thing here, add to that. But another thing is, here we have an increasingly mobile society too. People are much well informed on many occasions. So this will create pressure for change, overall pressure for change. But not necessarily about how it's formulated. Right? So that we see pressure here doesn't mean that it will end up that way. Right? I hope that was a good enough answer.
Okay, do you have any other questions?
I have
Last 2 questions and then we are gonna wrap up for today.
Okay. Can I start?
Yes.
My mom, she's in the hospital and she'll be out hopefully today. My dad's
So
calling.
please try to keep it short
Okay.
for both of you guys.
Hocam, but how can we create a balance between, because it might cause that transparency issues, because e-government is a beneficial part of government use, but when they go underground, how can it cause transparency issues? How can we find a balance between?
Oh, okay, just about e-government. E-government has 2 sides to the same story. One of them is e-government is a service delivery point. It's only giving you access to the service.
But in some parts.
But you rarely use, in Turkey at least, e-government as an active decision-making mechanism. And the information that is released through e-government is only informative and is only in the direction of the policies that are preferred by the policymakers. You will never have control over the information that is available in e-government websites. You don't have control over them. You just see them. You don't produce them. You don't contribute, take part in producing that information or its dissemination. And do you have expertise in any sort of an information that you receive on e-government, e-devlet? You are no doctor. I'm no doctor. Right? You are no lawyer. I mean, control over that piece of information. Well, another strategy is to get more and more technical in your jargon and language so that people will not be able to intervene.
Understand.
Yeah, understand. And did you have something else to say?
No, actually, but
That's it?
I was, considering not particularly in Turkey, but e-government as a, participating e-government.
Okay, just one thing about e-government. How is what we call e-government as an instrument or as a type of a medium of communication established? Is it established by independent authorities or is it established by public authorities themselves?
Public authorities
Themselves. So, as terms of information, then the end of the pipeline is the government. You see what I mean? You must have a separate and independent another authority to check the authenticity and the quality of what's provided here. Then it makes sense. Well, that happened in the COVID policy. Well, if you are to follow the news and get trust information from the government, then they had the health council, right? And they had the policies, the scientific council on health, right? In the COVID vaccination policies. But then it turned out that the statistics released by the ministry were wrong, or partially right, right? And then the organization of the union of doctors, right, or the chamber of doctors, then they released the real figures. Because they are the member, they are the workers, right? They're employed by the ministry and they give the real facts and values for the hospitals. And turns out that wasn't the story. So because they were controlling the government, because they were the source of information within the government circles, and they checked the authenticity of the information released by the government, the doctors. And then the ministry had to change its policy. And they corrected the numbers. You see what I mean? So you need a kind of a professional counter checkpoint. Unless you have it, it's always been one-way flow of information.
And then the last question, François.
Okay, so first things first, thank you for this lovely seminar. Glad
Thank
to
you.
hear. And for my question, well, you mentioned three actors, like three spheres, three dimensions: civil society, the markets, and the public service. So civil society acts as a mending actor; they demand the people, but for the public service and the market itself, they share their so-called customers. So, in context of urbanization, how this will affect our future? Like overall, they share their customers, and current urbanization is focused on the free market. So, how will the government or the public policymakers distribute the difference?
This is an interesting point. Well, just I cannot give a just right away, like a clear-cut answer to your question. But I think I can do this. Now, let's get, my apologies. I'll show you something. I will love to show this one in my lectures. This is, it goes like no trespassing. This is from Texas. Private property. Violators will be shot. Survivors will be shot again. God bless Texas. This is what you call the logic of private property. Religion and the state. So this is, Engels would be so pleased to see this. Right? So this is the logic of, see, power and property. And let's keep this in mind. Here, the logic of markets, right? You said that, right? The logic of market would increasingly dominate the forms of urbanization. I might have to disagree with you for two reasons. First, it will truly dominate logic of markets. It would truly dominate the logic of urbanization if everyone was able to erect this on their properties. But the thing is, not everyone has access to the land property.
hospitals and private
Oh, I'll
hospitals.
get to that.
Or like, if the government produces a cola, I would prefer Coca-Cola. So like, it's like
I will get to that point. But you see, this is the logic of private property. And it's really, this is the essence of capitalism, and this is the essence of urbanization in many regards. Right? But I'm going to tell you something else. Not everyone has this. Right? And people are increasingly subjected to violations and violence. Violence in the form of poverty, violence in the form of hunger, violence in the form of losing your chance to find a place to live in. So it takes the form of violence between, for instance, the tenant and the landlord or landlady. Right? It takes different forms of violence. Right? So this is an increasingly violent regime. So this is not sustainable. So you need a bit of force and violence to keep things under control. It's not going to work. But in the short run, you cannot take down this whole problem. You cannot, I mean, we don't see the revolution approaching fast. Then where do you find the solution? If market is no longer working for you, right? Meaning you have hospitals, private hospitals around, but then they kill your children. Right? You don't have access to school. Right? It gets increasingly progressively worse. Right? So market solutions are increasingly dried up. Well, market solutions, market-based solutions are increasingly dried up. Public solutions are increasingly dried up. So where do you go? Civil society will take over. In what forms? Mafia.
And religious sects.
Religious sects or organization orders. Friendship networks. In fact, all those new political alternatives are coming from neighborhood level organizations. Neighborhood level innovations are coming up from civil society. Civil society is broadly understood. Anything not under direct control of the politicians or the public sector or the market logic. This is how there are now all those radical policy alternatives are emerging at the local scale. But because civil society, I'm not talking about family, because family is changing as an institution. The whole idea of family is also changing as an institution. But whatever is going to happen, I think it will start here. So this neoliberal urbanization will ignite some transformation in political search for new politics. And new meaning here, that it will jump to the public domain, that it will eventually affect the market domain. I know this is a too broad answer, but I don't think that the logic of market will prevail. If you follow Polanyi, well, this is based on Polanyi. If you follow Polanyi, you go back here, eventually. You see what I mean? So this is like late 1800s, early 1900s. It's the same. This is just like before World War I. We're in that sort of period, I think. All the right. If you read the Communist Manifesto, right? If you're, for instance, familiar with Fabian socialism, right? They're all about new urban experiments. You know, the first socialists were all about experimenting with urbanization or the urban form too, right? So this is like just before World War I. The context is pretty similar to me, right? So we are here. Because just World War I, right? The liberal policies had already failed. And the market had already failed. Then you had civil society emerging. After the Second World War, public domain took over, reset the market, then we come back here. So it was like this. You see?
Okay, so if these are all the questions that you would like to ask, again, I would like to thank for your questions and contributions. I have really enjoyed on my behalf from this lively discussion, and I'm
the live discussion that took place. And before wrapping up for today, I would like to announce our next and final seminar of this term, which will take place on 26th December at 12 at Conference Salon, the conference hall. And this seminar will be given by the Assistant Professor Dr. Prof.Dr.M.K.Bayırbağ from the Social Sciences University of Ankara, and it will be on the subject of the yield to maturity on sovereign Eurobonds and foreign currency borrowing in emerging market economies. So we are mainly expecting particularly friends interested in economics to this seminar. And again, I would like to thank you all for your participation in today's seminar, and please join me thanking Mustafa Kemal Hocam for this great